Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Sinead, and if you're returning, then thank you so much for sticking around. Some of you guys have been with me for a really long time, and as you may know, I recently went blonde. So I've been blonde for a while, but I haven't made a lot of videos recently, and thank you so much to all of you for sticking around, and for those of you who have been with me for a really long time, I really appreciate it, and I'm sending you guys lots of love. Now, if you follow me on social media, you might have known that this past semester I spent a semester abroad at NYU Berlin, and it was the most incredible, life-changing experience. So I wanted to share with you guys some of my recommendations for visiting or studying abroad in Berlin that you definitely cannot miss. Now, for those of you considering study abroad, whether you're in high school or college, I highly recommend it. It's something that I've always been really passionate about. I really love traveling and learning about new cultures and meeting new people. In 10th grade, I went to Australia for an exchange where I stayed with a family in Shepparton. And this past semester, I was studying abroad at NYU's global location in Berlin, Germany. So for those of you who don't know, NYU has 12 study abroad locations and 3 portal campuses, which are New York City, this one, Shanghai, and Abu Dhabi. So you can go to any of these locations. They're all on the NYU Study Abroad website, and anybody can apply to study abroad. It doesn't really matter what your major is, but I do recommend checking ahead of time to see what classes are offered at that location that you can take for credit. So the reason I chose to go to NYU Berlin is actually because the Clive Davis Institute, where I study, has a study abroad program specifically for our students in Berlin. Berlin is the cultural capital for electronic music and technology and startups. And so it was a perfect place for me as a DJ, musician, producer, and technologist to go and see what it's all about. In order to study abroad, I had to fill out 2 applications instead of just the normal study abroad application. So first I had to do a Clive Davis Institute internal application because only 25 students of the 60 students in my program get to go to Berlin. It's very competitive, and I think it has a lot to do with your grades, your academic standing, and also your engagement in the community, and what you're doing and how that's relevant to the program. I was very lucky to have been chosen, and so I definitely didn't think twice about going to Berlin. Now, I've traveled a lot around the world, especially to parts of East Asia and, as I mentioned earlier, Australia, but I've only ever been to Europe once, and that was in Spain. So I was really excited to explore the rest of Europe with this trip. I spent 3.5 months in Berlin, and meanwhile I also visited a city in West Germany called Kassel. I went to Paris, a few cities in Italy, and then Amsterdam. If you're studying abroad, especially in a place like Europe, it's really easy to travel to other countries by taking the railways or even really cheap flights. But the thing that I found is that I actually wanted to spend more time in Berlin because that's where I was staying, and the city was so interesting, and there was always just so much to do. Packing for a 3.5 month trip, basically moving halfway across the world, is a little tricky. I brought 2 big suitcases and a smaller one, and it was mostly some clothes and music gear that I wanted to work with while I was there. All the other things I got there, and I lived in the student resident, which most students are required to, and they provided us with bed sheets and kitchen utensils, furniture, and I basically really only needed to bring some clothes, and anything else that I needed I got in Germany because everything is pretty cheap. Now, one of the questions I get asked the most about studying abroad is how I dealt with the culture and the language barrier. And so I started learning German back in January when I found out that I was going to be studying abroad, and that basically gave me 8 months to practice my German on Duolingo. Now, Duolingo is not the best for learning conversational languages, especially when I got to Berlin. It was a lot different to the German that I was learning on Duolingo, but the more I was immersed in it and the more I practiced, I was actually able to get quite conversational, and now I understand a lot of German, and that really surprised me. I also found that watching German shows with subtitles and also listening to German podcasts like Coffee Break German are a really great way to start getting your brain used to hearing and speaking the language. Okay, now that's enough of me rambling. Let's get to some of my recommendations for places that you should check out while you're in Berlin. First up are my two go-to cafes. One of them is near the NYU residence and one of them is near the NYU campus, which are actually 30 minutes apart on the U-Bahn, which is the underground train system. So the first one is Swift Coffee on Charlottenstrasse, which is the street that the NYU Berlin residence is on. If you walk north, there's a really cute local independent coffee store run and owned by some English people. Which is nice if you just got there and you need some coffee, but you don't know how to order your coffee in German. But I really liked going there in the mornings to get my croissant and an espresso, and it's just a really nice, quiet area. You can work with your laptop there. I've seen some people work there as well, but it's a rather small cafe and it's on a very quiet street. If you want something more bustling and local, I suggest Nothaft Cafe. There's one on Ebbeswaterstrasse, which is near the academic center, and there's also a bunch of other ones since it's a local chain. They make really great coffee, space cakes, and also these homemade bagels, and they have all kinds of different bagel fillings that are quite interesting. Berlin is also a huge food city. It's one of the cultural hubs of the world, and I was actually surprised by how much multicultural food I was able to find. Before the summer, I actually became vegan/vegetarian, but Berlin was really great because there are so many vegan options and they were absolutely delicious and affordable. My first recommendation is a vegan sushi restaurant called Secret Garden. It's in Warschauer Strasse, which is a district full of vintage stores, restaurants, bars, and clubs. My favorite Indian restaurant there was Amrit, which is near Potsdamer Platz. It's a huge Indian restaurant that takes up the whole block, but they do South Indian food right. Next one is a Korean bibimbap restaurant, which are rice bowls. And this place is called Namsan, which is in Bergmann-Kiez. It's actually just on the other side of the main street that is Bergmannstrasse. And it's hidden in this residential district. A very small local kitchen style rice bowl. They're very affordable and very vegan friendly. Another restaurant that I tried with my other friend who's vegan was 1990 Vegan Living. It's a Vietnamese vegan restaurant that does these little dim sum plates, and I went there because the friend that I was going with said that it was one of his favorite restaurants in the city the last time he had come to visit Berlin. Next one is Café Nullpunkt. This is a cafe right next to the NYU Berlin residence. I went there all the time to grab breakfast or brunch if I was in a rush because it was close by and the food was really good and it was affordable. Speaking of brunch, one of my favorite brunch spots to go to was Steel Vintage Bike Cafe. It's a cafe chain, there's two of them, decorated with these bikes. Now, bike culture in Europe, especially in cities like Berlin and Amsterdam, is huge, and this cafe had some of the best food I had ever tasted. You can go there with your friends. I know a lot of people go there for dates, and it's really, really cute. I really like going there to eat. And my last brunch/lunch recommendation is 44 Breckie, which is an egg drop sandwich shop near the NYU Academic Center. What is an egg drop sandwich shop? That's a mouthful. 44 Breckie sells these sandwiches that are made with poached eggs, and you can add avocado, smoked salmon, or a bunch of other toppings. And it was a really great quick lunch in between classes that I would go to with my friends. Okay, now enough of food because talking about food is making me really hungry. Next up, I wanted to share with you guys some of my favorite museums. So one of my goals while I was in Berlin was to visit as many museums as I could. Theoretically all of them, but there are 160 museums in Berlin, and I didn't get to all of them. I really only got to about 40, but I saw so many different kinds of collections and artworks that I felt really inspired, and Berlin is such a great city for learning about cultures, not just German culture. My first recommendation is Hamburger Bahnhof, which is a contemporary art gallery run by the Neue National Gallery. I actually wrote my final architecture paper on this building, which used to be a train station that they slowly turned into an art gallery. And it's a really interesting story of how that came to be, but the artworks inside were really what blew me away. The next one is the Fürler collection. Now, you have to get a reservation online before you go to the Fürler collection because they literally won't let you just walk in. The tickets are pretty cheap and there's a student discount, and the collection is absolutely incredible. It's a private collection of ancient Asian and Cambodian art housed in a World War II bunker. Now the space has been transformed into this beautiful, chic, and magnificent gallery. They even have a room that is flooded with water that is supposed to be a calming pool that you can look into. My favorite part about going to see that exhibition is that it's a fully guided tour and you only get 45 minutes inside, but the experience starts with a listening session of a John Cage piece, which I have never experienced at any gallery. Next one is Schloss Charlottenburg, which is the Charlottenburg Palace, and it's located in the district of Charlottenburg. Now this might be a little bit far out if you look at it on a map, but it's really easy to get to by the U-Bahn, and I highly recommend visiting it because it's such a beautiful representation of Rococo style architecture from the 1700s. The castle was built by Wilhelm I for his wife, Queen Sophie Charlotte, and it's just such a beautiful dedication of love, and the gardens in the back extend for miles and miles, which include a mausoleum housing both Wilhelm I and Wilhelm II and their wives. The next gallery that I loved was the Neue National Gallery, which I had mentioned earlier. Part of their collection is housed in the Hamburger Bahnhof. It's a contemporary art gallery, and the architecture of that building is quite interesting as well. It's a complete black square, glass and completely transparent, but the entire gallery is actually underneath in the basement of what you see as the building outside. And I think it's really interesting how they built that area and developed it during the divide of the Berlin Wall. Now, as an audiovisual artist, of course, I had to go to one of the best audiovisual galleries in the world, which is the Julia Stoczek collection. This is also near the NYU Berlin residence, and I often just walked there. It's 3 stories of a lot of independent artists and curated exhibitions around audio and visual. It was really interesting. They even had like a dance screening room in the back with disco balls hanging from the ceiling and these huge audiovisual installations on display. If you're a video game person like me, then you might want to go visit the Computerspiele Museum, which is the computer game museum. It's a rather small museum, but they have a wide host of arcade games and retro video games from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And the plus side is you get to play all of the games, and I just spent like 3 hours in there with my friend playing every single game they had. Another one for you musicians out there is the Museum of Musical Instruments, located near the Berlin Philharmonic Hall. This museum has one of the oldest Wurlitzer synthesizers in the world, and you can see it on display upstairs in one of their rooms, and sometimes they even have someone performing on it to a silent film, which is what the Wurlitzer originally was used for. The next museum I want to tell you about is the Walter Gropius Bau Museum. So funny story, I actually passed out in this museum during Berlin Art Week at one of their gallery openings, and that was not fun. But I remember going to the Walter Gropius Bau Museum, and I was blown away by the architecture. The building that now houses the museum used to be a rich person's estate, and they have this beautiful courtyard in the middle that was probably used for dances and hosting parties. That is now the interconnecting room between the galleries. Now, the last two museums I want to recommend are the Museum of Photography and the Jewish Museum. I think these are some of the most important museums in the history of Berlin as a city, and you can see some of the most mind-blowing and critical pieces on the history and culture of Berlin. Now, moving on, here's my favorite part, is the clubs. I went to a lot of clubs when I was in Berlin, and honestly, if you asked me to pick my favorite one, I would just say all of them, because it's really about the club culture there. It's not really about the glamour or the Instagramming or anything. It's really about the experience, being with the people, and listening to really great dance music. In fact, a lot of clubs don't even let you take photos inside, so they'll put a sticker over your camera, and at some places they might go to the extreme of even taking your phone away. But don't let that scare you, because it's not supposed to take away from your experience, but rather add to it in such a beautiful way. Alright, so these are the clubs that you definitely have to visit if you go to Berlin. The first one I'm going to tell you about is one of my favorite clubs because they have a lot of independent and local DJs that play there. There's 2 rooms as well as a beer garden in the summer. RSO is pretty well known for hosting a lot of independent and Berlin local artists, as well as big parties like Ellen Alien and Technozid. RSO is great because they're open all weekend long, and you can just go there if you want to dance but you don't want to go somewhere too crowded. I've gone to RSO and waited 4 hours in line before, but I've also walked straight in on some nights, and so it really depends on who you're going to see, and make sure you know who you're going to see. The next one is probably one of everybody's favorites. It's Kit Kat. Now, if you've never heard of Kit Kat before, then I suggest you go Google it. It's a very fun time and a little bit harder to get into, but it's always such a great crowd. Everyone's very respectful, and my tip for going to Kit Kat is to check what themed night it is or who's playing, because that'll really tell you how to dress and whether or not you'll get in. Next one is, of course, one of the most famous clubs in Berlin, Berghain. Berghain is infamous for being really hard to get into. Everybody wears all black, and when you're standing in line, it's like nobody's talking, nobody's looking at their phone, nobody's taking photos. Everybody's just silent or whispering. And so my tip for trying to get into Berghain is to act a little older, don't take too many photos, don't be too excited, don't seem like a tourist, but just be chill, act natural, and if you can speak a little bit of German, then that'll help you get through the door for sure. The next club was recommended to me by one of my professors, actually, and it's Ohm, or Kraftwerk Berlin, which is also the same building that Tresor is hosted in. So I'll tell you about Tresor first. Tresor is one of the oldest techno clubs in Berlin that is still alive and very much popping off. It used to be in the vault of an old Wertheim department store, which is why it's called Tresor, but it's now in a building that is collectively known as Kraftwerk Berlin. Kraftwerk Berlin is a power plant, and underneath of the main concert or power plant area, there's a small basement, and in that basement there's a club called Ohm. Ohm is a small techno/disco club, and it's pretty hard to get into, especially on weekends. If you go line up around midnight when they open, you have a higher chance of getting in, but because it's such a small space, the maximum capacity is reached by like 1 or 2 a.m., and so the line ends up moving really, really slowly. Last time I was at Ohm, I lined up for 3 hours, but it was so worth it because inside the crowd and the energy was incredible. And lastly, a club that I definitely think a lot of people don't know about is Renate, which is inside of these old Soviet apartment buildings. And they've taken over around 2 or 3 floors of the apartment building to turn into an underground club. There's also a huge outdoor area, and they have food, they have pizza and drinks, and you can basically stay there all weekend because they're open from Friday night to Monday morning for some parties. I was there on their 15th anniversary weekend, and it was absolutely incredible. They had 7 rooms open, and the party just went on for hours and hours, and there were at least 2,000, 3,000 people there. If you have any other Berlin clubs that are your favorite, I'd love to hear about them, so leave a comment down below. I'm gonna finish off this video with a few other places that I think would be cool to check out while you're in Berlin if you're looking to sightsee or see some concerts or shows or just experience a new culture. So first one is Silent Green, which is a concert venue, and they have a lot of cool underground DJ shows there. Hard Wax is a record store that a lot of techno Berlin DJs used to go to, and it's still very much alive and running. A lot of people recommend going to get records there, and they're pretty affordable. Another one is one that I mentioned earlier, the Berlin Philharmonic Hall. You can see the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra play there, which is literally the best symphonic orchestra in the world. The hall is absolutely beautiful, it's state-of-the-art designed, and they have concerts almost every day and definitely on the weekends, so be sure to go check that out. Next one is Teufelsberg, which used to be a World War II listening center for the US, and now there's just graffiti art, and you can go there to see the rest of the city on top of a hill. You basically climb up this huge listening tower, and right at the top you can see the entire city. I did a photo shoot there at sunset, and it was just so beautiful. I highly recommend going there around sunset, but they do close after dark. Another place to check out is Hackische Markt and Hackische Hof, which is one of the older arts communities that existed in East Berlin, and that's where a lot of artists still work and have their studios. There's also a cinema in the back where you can go see films that are being screened in theaters. Now, I'm not a huge bar person, but there was one bar that I kept going back to every single week, and that was Queer, which is a queer bar located in Neukölln. They have 2 rooms. One is a more chill, relaxed conversation room, and then they have a music listening room where there's different DJs playing ambient, electronic, breakbeat, jungle music, whatever really suits the night. They have beautiful decor, and the drinks are really, really amazing. Even if you don't drink like me, I'll usually get a tea there, or they have kombucha. Another place to go if you're looking to have some outdoor fun is Tempelhoffeld, which is the old Tempelhof airport that is now one of the largest open-air parks in the world. You can go windsurfing there, you can bike across the runway, or scooter, or run, or do a picnic. It's really up to you because it's just such a big open area, and there's always people hanging out there all the time. If you're into more history or exploring architecture, then I recommend Reichstag Bundestag, which is the House of Parliament for Germany, located in Berlin. This building is from the 1800s, and they recently redid it and added a new dome roof to it, which you can go up to for free. It's a really great view at the top, and it's also just a nice, fun thing to do with friends. If you want an even better view of the city, then you'll want to go to Berliner Dome. But the caveat is that you have to first climb 257 steps because there is no elevator in the Berliner Dome. The Berliner Dome is the Berlin Cathedral located on Museum Island, and it's a magnificent Renaissance Baroque building. Even if you're not going to go to the top, go visit it. It's only a few dollars to get in, but if you do end up going to the top, then you'll see one of the most beautiful views of the entire city, and you can walk all the way around the rooftop to see a 360 view. Now, if you're visiting near November or December like I was when I was studying abroad, then you'll want to go check out the Weihnachtsmarkt, which are the Christmas markets. Germans know how to do Christmas right because they just go all out for the holiday. It's basically a month-long celebration, and these winter Christmas markets are open from the end of November until the end of December. You can get food there, clothes, homemade goods, household items, and any Christmas presents that you might need. It's only usually a few dollars to get in, and some of them are even free, and there's literally one in every neighborhood. So even if you just wanted to go see different Christmas markets, it would take you like 2 or 3 days. Finally, my last recommendation is a place I didn't even make it to, but I heard is super cool, and it's Liquid Rom, which is a techno spa. This is another place that my friends told me about, and it is located in what used to be a circus or carnival tent that they turned into a huge spa and sauna area. And on Tuesdays and Thursday nights, they have DJs playing techno music while you float in a salt bath or relax in a sauna. Now, doesn't that sound like the best way to end your day? Alright, that's it for my Berlin recommendations. Thank you guys so much for sticking around and for listening to me talk for so long. If you like this video, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe down below. My name is Sinead, and I will be looking forward to sharing